Yo, what up? This is D Knight, and you're listening to the Pardon the Insurrection podcast. My oh my, we've had so much going on. For starters, in case you missed it, we've got a new addition to the Pardon Pie family, Tara Dublin. Make sure you go follow her on Twitter at Tara Dublin Rocks. Also, pick up a copy of her book while you're at it. Make her day, The Sound of Settling. A very fun and interesting read compared to the things we talk about on this podcast. But yeah, we're heading toward the do or die time for the 2024 election. Go ahead and hit up JoeBiden.com. Get that man like $1 a month or something. Help his campaign staff up and get prepared to try and save our democracy. And make sure to grab like one other person you know and tell them about the podcast. Make sure they subscribe and tune in every single week. We got a lot of things coming up for you this year. We need all the support that we can get. So if you do your part and help us grow our audience, we'll do our part and help elect Joe Biden in 2024 and save American democracy. And this is the Pardon the Insurrection podcast. Yo, what up? This is D Knight, and you're listening to the Pardon the Insurrection podcast. We've got a little pocket pardon episode for you today. I'm sure you have come to the conclusion that every time you turn on this podcast is going to be yet another set yourself on fire, pull your hair out moment in the political landscape, and you wouldn't be wrong, because that seems to be just a regular occurrence. That is the world we live in these days. It's nonstop insanity. But before we get to that, we had a couple of episodes with the ladies drop earlier this week. So make sure you take the opportunity to go back and check those out. If you can't tell, I miss them dearly, and I'm absolutely certain that you're probably tired of hearing my voice drone on and on and on. So they are a welcome addition every time we have the opportunity to all get together. Also like to give a shout out to our sponsor, Sheets and Giggles. Make sure you check out sheetsandgiggles.com. Pick you up some of the most fantastic sheets on planet Earth, or at least in America, and sustainably sourced and all that good stuff, good for the environment. And at sheetsandgiggles.com, they're also pushing some $69 promotional online gift cards. They are the nicest gift cards in existence. And so do yourself a favor and grab a gift card for the holiday season so someone that you know and love can treat themselves to a wonderfully pleasurable sleeping experience. All right, on to the news. So President Biden met with Xi Jinping of China the other day, which is quite a noteworthy spectacle considering we have a contentious relationship with China at the moment over trade policy, supporting the independence of Taiwan, and on and on and on. Given that this took place in America, I think that signifies the fact that Biden is in a strong position politically. The symbolism of the president of China having to fly over here and Biden having to fly from DC to meet halfway in LA. It's not lost to me that is symbolic of the position President Biden holds politically and internationally, as well as Xi Jinping, that, it feels like a power move to have someone come meet you on your own turf, which, in Biden's case, California is still his own turf. But at the same time, he met Xi halfway, which over the course of the past few years feels like it would have been a concession made by Xi to come here. And I'm sure that that's connected in some way to the fact that for the first time in the last 40 years, thanks to President Biden's economic policies and overall leadership, the United States economy is outpacing China. Finally, someone put America first. Republicans and conservatives do a lot of hand-wringing about the threats, economically and otherwise, that China poses to America. And yet here it is, Biden and the Democrats making sure we put our economic policies in place in such a way as to not only hinder China's dominance, but support America's and put us in a position that we might be able to more feasibly reach negotiations that are favorable to the United States and democracy. And Biden's taking care of that. He on the job. We've got more communication and cooperation between the United States and China's military, reaching agreement on stopping or at least slowing the production of fentanyl and keeping it from entering the United States borders, and a number of other things. And then Biden, of course, must be feeling himself, must be feeling as though he's operating from a position of strength, because he took the opportunity after the meeting to refer to Xi Jinping as a dictator, which, I mean, given the fact that the standards for elections and democracy in China are somehow even further below ours at this point, it just goes to the fact that Xi Jinping can't be removed from office. There's no more elections. He's president for life. That's some dictator type shit. But normally, saying those things out loud, the Chinese government finds offensive and typically finds a way to make their displeasure known through some sort of nonviolent retaliation. Biden must feel like he's operating from a position of strength where he can throw these shots out here and make these dudes feel uncomfortable, ruffle some feathers, speak truth to power, as they say, which is strange, given that he's the president of the United States. He should always feel like he has that leeway. But yeah, I just wanted to start off with some pro-Biden content because I'm like the leader in chastising the news for not being positive enough on what it is that Biden is doing. Oh, and speaking of good news for Biden, Special Counsel Hur, you forgot about that one, didn't you? You're like, oh, so many special counsels, we can't even keep up with them. But yeah, Special Counsel Hur, who was investigating alleged mishandling of classified documents by President Biden when he wasn't in office, has announced that there will be no charges against nobody that Biden or any of his aides or his staff included. Which I feel like a few weeks ago we told you that would be the case. When it was announced that Hur wanted to interview Biden and a few other people at the White House, I took that as a sign that they just wanted to wrap up some loose ends, make sure they got everyone on the record who could feasibly be involved, and that they were going to come to a conclusion very soon after, and that this was something that they would not do. Prosecutors typically would not do, interviewing the supposed target of a criminal investigation voluntarily unless they weren't planning to file charges. And voila, here we are. No charges announced. I assume they're going to take the information that they gathered during the investigation, along with whatever was provided to them during these interviews, and compile it in a report, as special counsels are wont to do once their investigation concludes. And we'll probably see that sometime over the course of the next year. So hooray for Biden. Now, you're white. I keep doing this. You're not white wing, but right wing nut jobs are going to be like, oh, it's just a witch hunt. They're only out to get Trump. And, it's the Biden DOJ cover. And look, here's the thing. Biden and Trump weren't the only individuals under investigation for potential mishandling of classified documents. You may or may not remember one Republican presidential candidate, Mike Pence, who was also under investigation for potentially mishandling classified documents. And what is the conclusion special counsel came to in that case? That any, potential spill was accidental, unintentional, and they didn't find any criminal liability as it pertains to Mike Pence. Mike Pence is a political opponent of Joe Biden. Why ain't Joe trying to lock him up? You see what I'm saying? Prosecutors, they took the opportunity to look at the facts as it pertained to each individual investigation. They looked at Biden. They looked at Trump. They looked at Pence. They came to the conclusion that Biden and Pence cooperated with the investigation. They voluntarily turned over documents. They voluntarily sat down for interviews. They did nothing to obstruct the investigation. They didn't share any classified information with, unauthorized individuals. They weren't running their mouths, sharing nuclear secrets with fucking foreign billionaires like someone we know. And they did what most prosecutors in situations like this normally tend to do. They decline to file charges. Trump's case is totally different. He refused to turn over documents voluntarily. He defied a subpoena. He lied to his lawyers. He tried to hide the documents from investigators. When he realized there was evidence of him obstructing the investigation, he tried to have the security footage of him hiding the documents from investigators deleted. He shared nuclear secrets with an Australian billionaire. He's doing all kind of shit. Like, he's just getting what's coming to him. He did this to himself. So hooray for Biden. Trump is fucked. I mean, that is what it is. Anyway, other occurrences taking place here in the news. The man who attacked Paul Pelosi with a hammer, much to the delight of Republicans who are totally fine with attacks against political officials as long as it's not their own. He's been found guilty on both criminal counts. He could spend anywhere from 20 to 30 years in prison for each charge. Assume he'll be serving that time concurrently, not consecutively. Oh, and there goes the end to one of the Republicans' conspiracy theories. And just, feel free to look that up. Down in Georgia, Judge McAfee entered a protective order over the discovery in the Fulton County case, given that one of the lawyers for Trump's co-defendants in the RICO trial leaked the proffer videos of Sidney Powell and Jenna Ellis to the press, in my opinion, attempting to intimidate or influence witnesses. You release these videos of the evidence they're offering to the DA's office, people who were close to Trump and his inner circle, and this will put them in a position where they're in an unfavorable light in the eyes of Trump supporters. And of course, Trump is prone to motivate his followers to engage in violence, lash out against his political rivals. And, I'm sure these people more than anyone are familiar with the way Trump operates. And this is an attempt to get them to maybe mitigate some of the more harmful aspects of their testimony when they do reach trial and have to take the stand. And not just them, but like other potential witnesses who may also be involved in testifying in the RICO case down in Georgia. I mean, this is just an attempt to go out of the way. I mean, I find it very odd and it's unusual to not have a protective order entered before engaging in sharing discovery with defendants, especially in a case like this. They do things a little differently down there in Georgia, I guess. But Fani Willis immediately got on that, and Judge McCaffrey has since reacted by making sure no more discovery of such evidence as this be disclosed to the public by Trump and his cohorts and their attorneys. Speaking of the Georgia case, Fani Willis's office has asked the judge in the case revoke the bond of Harrison Floyd, saying he's been intimidating witness and co-defendants in the case. My oh my, doesn't that sound fucking familiar? I wonder who else has been doing that. And for those of you unaware of Harrison Floyd's role in Georgia and why he was prosecuted as part of this RICO conspiracy, he was heavily involved in the plot to pressure Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss to falsely confessing to helping rig the 2020 election against Trump down there in Georgia. So some of the conditions of his release included not communicating directly or indirectly about the facts of the case with anyone that would be construed as a co-defendant or any possible witnesses. The prosecutors are saying that his repeated attacks of Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger and one of his top aides, Gabriel Sterling, who I would definitely say fit the bill as potential witnesses in this case, are cause to have his bail revoked by the judge. He's made multiple references to them on Twix, and in one of the social media posts they cited, he seemed to imply that Raffensperger and Sterling had both interfered in the 2020 election, and they had lied to Congress in their congressional testimony, and they had lied to Fani Willis's office. Willis's office is also maintaining that during a podcast interview where he discussed Jenna Ellis's guilty plea, prosecutors are saying that counts as indirect communication to a co-defendant, especially after commenting on her released proffer video by saying that she was a, quote, whole mess, and he accused her of lying about another potential witness in the case. I'm not really rooting for Floyd here in any way whatsoever. bro, you dug your own hole and you're in it now. I just wish like there was an equal application of this particular rule about revoking bond applied to all the co-defendants in the RICO case. And if you're, wondering who I'm referring to specifically, yes, I mean Trump. Like, when is anyone going to revoke his bail, revoke his bond for all this crazy shit he's been saying? Oh my God. Like, what are we doing, guys? It's about that time. I mean, Judge Engoron up in New York had his gag order stayed by an appellate judge, that was preventing Trump and his lawyers from directly attacking Engoron's chief court clerk. And Trump immediately went back to targeting her on social media. It's bananas. Like, let's lock his ass up, revoke his bail. I mean, the amount of leeway that this dude is getting, like no one else in the history of criminal court will ever get. It's insane. Either way, Trump's not going to remain a free man for long, because once this DC trial takes place next year, it's a wrap. The evidence continues to mount, and we even have damning information revealed to us by none other than Trump himself in an interview with Jonathan Karl. Let me play that for you.
But if you look at the real size of that crowd, it was never reported correctly. It's the biggest crowd I've ever spoken in front of by far.
Really?
By far. That went down to that went back to the Washington Monument.
You told them you were going to go up to the Capitol. Were you just...
I was going to, and the Secret Service said, you can't. And then by the time I would have, and then when I got back, I wanted to go back. I was thinking about going back during the problem to stop the problem, doing it myself. Secret Service didn't like that idea too much.
So what?
And I could have done that, and you know what? I would have been very well received. Don't forget, the people that went to Washington that day, in my opinion, they went because they thought the election was rigged. That's why they went.
All right, that's absolutely fucking insane. One of my favorite things about Trump, though, is that if you let him speak long enough, he will confess to his crimes. He cannot seem to help himself. Whew. All right, where to start there? So, the fact that he's willing to admit that after hours of fighting at the Capitol and numerous people begging him to put out a message, telling the insurrectionists to stop, Nancy Pelosi spending hours on the phone with police and the military trying to get the National Guard dispatched to DC to help secure the Capitol. Like watching the shit unfold on Fox News, and he's like, instead of telling the people to stop, I actually wanted to go up to the Capitol. That's fucking insane. That's insane. And you compound that with the fact that he was warned that numerous people were attempting to enter the ellipse. He was giving his speech earlier that day, that they were armed with all sorts of weaponry, and he wanted the magnetometers disabled so they couldn't check the crowd for any sort of weapons. It's an attempted attack on the Capitol, and Trump's not only not afraid, he wants to be there with the fucking crowd carrying out the attack on the Capitol. And he's like saying it out loud. And then his admission that he believes that the people who showed up at the Capitol on January 6th were there because they believe the 2020 election is stolen seals the fucking deal in a couple of ways. One, he was the one lying, and we know he was lying, and telling them that the election was stolen. They wouldn't have been there if not for him, and they wouldn't have believed that the 2020 election was stolen if not for him. He's wholly responsible for that. Add that to the fact that we saw in Sidney Powell's proffer video that she saw multiple people on numerous occasions tell Trump that he lost the 2020 election, as well as having Jenna Ellis relay to us her conversation with Dan Scavino, where he told her that they had no plans whatsoever of leaving the White House. They're just not going to do it. And this is that conversation occurred literally the same day that Trump sent out that message on Twitter telling all of his followers to show up at the Capitol on January 6th because it will be wild. What's really wild is how guilty he fucking appears after connecting those dots. What's even wilder than that? A judge in Colorado overseeing a civil trial that was brought by CREW, the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, against Trump, citing the 14th Amendment, barring any officer of the United States who has engaged in or supported insurrection from serving in office. That judge has ruled that Trump did in fact engage in incitement in support of the insurrection, but because of the strict language of Section 3, the amendment excludes the office of the presidency because the president is not an officer of the United States. I just want you to stop and think for a second. What kind of sense does it make that immediately after the Civil War, that anyone who engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States should be barred from office unless they're the fucking president? So only the elected president of the United States can overthrow the government? The fuck kind of sense does that make? And that concludes this episode of Pardon the Insurrection.